Imperare sibi, maximum imperium est. The greatest empire is the one within. The Discipline Triptych. Modern society has turned discipline into a parody, a product sold in guides, apps, and weekend retreats. 7 easy steps, they say, as if the greatest battle of the human soul, the one philosophers, mystics, and awakened men have dedicated their lives, could be completed during a luxury seminar with infused water and scented towels. The word discipline has been stripped of all meaning. It's recited like a mantra, but the answers it gives are hollow, vague at best. The ancient Stoics knew that. Discipline comes from discipulus, the Latin word for student. To become disciplined is not to master a hack, it is to become an apprentice, on the hardest path of all. Epictetus once said, "Do not be satisfied with the mere appearance of virtue, become its student. Train your judgment like you train the body." This is the path of inner order, of self-governance, of character forged in silence, struggle, and solitude. If you're here, it means you're ready to face the brutal truth. Discipline is not a shortcut. It is the crucible of character. This is the first step. Welcome to the Discipline Triptych, the beginning of the foundation of your inner empire. In this episode, you'll discover what a real decision demands and what it destroys, how your brain actually chooses, often before you're even aware, and how to train the part of you that chooses with clarity, not impulse. Let us begin. Part 1. The first cut. From your earliest days, you are taught a lie, that freedom is at your fingertips, that the world is wide open, that you can have anything as long as you just choose. And then they sell you the product that makes that choice for you. But the truth is this: real decision is not easy. It never was. The word decision comes from the Latin decidere, to cut off, to sever, physically, mentally, entirely. To decide is not to add something new. It's to amputate every other possibility. That's why the Stoics treated decision as sacred. A real decision doesn't say, "I'll try." It says, "Everything else ends here." And now ask yourself, do you feel a resistance rising inside? A quiet voice whispering, "But what about all the other options? What if this isn't the right one? What if I lose too much?" That discomfort, that's the beginning of truth. So ask yourself, what kind of man can make a decision and hold it, no matter the cost? See his posture, hear his voice, feel the steel in his character. The man who has mastered true decision is like a steel spike driven into frozen earth. Unmovable, unshakable. But remember, strength does not come from stubbornness. It comes from clarity. True decision is not blind. It sees through illusion. It sees clearly and acts anyway. So answer this honestly. Do you know how your decisions are really made? Do you believe you're in control? Or is something else choosing for you? Because even now, in this moment, your brain is deciding. Quietly, automatically, it filters, selects, ignores, chooses. But there's a war inside, and two forces are fighting for control. In the next section, we'll look at the hidden mechanics behind every choice your mind makes, and why knowing them is the first step to reclaiming your power. Part 2. The War Within. In the 1970s and 80s, psychologist and Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman described what we now know as the two-system theory. This isn't metaphor, it's a map of how the human mind actually works. On one side, you have System 1, fast, automatic, emotional. It reacts instantly, without reflection. It pulls your hand from fire. It smiles at familiar faces. It senses a gut feeling within seconds. This system draws on ancient, well-worn neural structures. The amygdala scans for danger or reward. It signals the frontal cortex, assigning emotional value. Then the basal ganglia, the old core of habit, reinforce the familiar through a loop of feedback. System 1 is our autopilot. Efficient, fast, but sometimes blind. Then there's System 2, the most powerful weapon of our species. Slow, conscious, rational. This system weighs the options. It calculates risk. It handles dilemmas, future plans, moral judgments, and strategic decisions. Here, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and planning, teams with the anterior cingulate to detect internal conflict. Then the parietal regions engage in high-level computation and analysis. System 2 activates when you truly stop. When you ask, what are the consequences? Is this worth the risk? Is this aligned with my values? But here's the catch. System 2 is lazy. It won't engage unless it must. If you're tired, distracted, stressed, System 1 takes over. That's why we make impulsive choices, regret them later, and wonder, what was I thinking? The brutal truth is, you weren't thinking at all. You were reacting to external stimulus, automatically, mechanically, without awareness. In reality, every decision is a conflict. System 1 whispers, now, do it. System 2 responds, wait, think. And behind the curtain, the brain chooses the winner. In the words of Epictetus, a man becomes free when his reason no longer yields to passion. But this takes training. This is your battlefield. This isn't a debate. It's a neurobiological cut. A clean elimination of one path in favor of another. Every decision you make is the outcome of a silent war between emotion and reason, speed and depth, instinct and control. You carry within you both systems. One is fast but reckless. The other is wise but slow. The goal is not to pick one forever. The goal is to recognize who is speaking and when to listen. But recognition alone isn't enough. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics knew through brutal experience. Your brain doesn't just contain two systems, it reinforces them with every decision. Thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain can rewire itself. New choices carve new paths. Repeated action becomes identity, and that is where real transformation begins. If you treat these words as merely information, you've wasted your time. This is your moment to begin the work, to become the stonecutter, patient, precise, reshaping the mind itself. That's what we'll cover in the next section, how to wield the blade of discipline and train your inner command. Part 3, carve the path. You now know what you're up against. Your task is nothing less than the reconstruction of your mind. Let me warn you before we begin. The language we use is both a tool and a trap. Today we speak of discipline in digital metaphors, reprogramming, installing, upgrading, as if the mind were a machine. But your brain is not a computer. It cannot be wiped, reinstalled, or reformatted. Your brain grows, thread by thread, like an ancient loom. Each thought, each decision, each habit, a single thread in the tapestry of your identity. Why do I tell you this? To kill the illusion of quick change. This is not that place. This is not that message. Real transformation demands sacrifice. A word modernity has deleted from its vocabulary. We want comfort, we want ease, and we want it fast. But now, you know the truth. So here is your first practical direction. Not a prescription, not a promise, but a doorway. You will walk it alone. If you want to begin mastering the power of decision, your first principle is to train your brain to lean more heavily on System 2, the slow, conscious, rational mode of thought, planning, analysis, long-term vision, reflection. System 1 still has its place for instant reactions, survival instincts, but it was never meant to run your life. It was made for the savannah, and evolution hasn't moved it since. So step 1 is this: awareness. Conscious awareness is the switch between systems. It starts slow, especially at first. That's why you need time. You need a buffer. Create your own tactical pause. Before you act, before you react. A breath, a 10-second count, a silent minute in the car. Find your version. What Viktor Frankl called the last of human freedoms. The space between stimulus and response. In that space lives logos, consciousness, judgment, and clarity. Every culture has a word for this moment. It is where the human brain separates itself from instinct. If you train that space, change will begin, but only a flicker, because your mind will try to pull you back to old patterns, old reflexes, and old survival paths. Not because they were right, but because they worked. They kept you alive, and your brain cares more about survival than truth. Even pain, if it kept you breathing, becomes safe. But you're not on the savannah anymore. So train yourself for the new world and for the man you are meant to become. Next practice. Visualize the consequences of repetition. Every action builds the pathway for the same action to repeat. Neuroplasticity means your brain will reinforce whatever you do, even the worst things. Missing a workout, reacting in anger, escaping through alcohol, betraying a vow. None of these are single events. Each is a vote, a carving, a path laid down in neural stone. And if repeated 1,000 times, they become highways. Roads so familiar, you can't exit them anymore. You don't drive them, you endure them. So remember this. Every act is a beginning, or a reinforcement. Now you know. So it's time to choose. What path will you walk? What identity will you forge? What empire will you build or abandon? Remember the words of Epictetus. Every matter has its price. If you wish to be wise, pay it. In effort, in time, in decision. So pause, become aware, visualize the future impact. Repeat that process 1,000 times, and you will be walking toward freedom. The next step. And now, speak. Leave a comment and answer this. What is one decision you've been postponing, and why? The empire begins when we stop lying to ourselves. If this struck something in you, it means your war has already begun. Don't face it alone. Join this channel and stand with those who still fight. Don't rush. Let this message settle. Reflect on it. Act on it. And when you're ready, when you've turned understanding into action, watch the next episode and learn how the greatest minds embraced discomfort and made it their path to mastery. I salute you.